Chapter 9. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the land, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. So this reference to locusts is again another allusion to the plagues of the Exodus. And these locusts have power as the scorpions of the earth have power. So who are the scorpions? Ezekiel 2, verse 3. And he said unto me, Son of man, I send thee to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that hath rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed me unto this very day. Verse 6. And thou, son of man, be not afraid of them, neither be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns be with thee, and thou dost dwell among scorpions. So the scorpions are symbolic of Israel. We also see Yeshua using this same symbolism. In Luke 10, verse 19, it says, Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. We already saw that the serpents are the tribe of Dan, and the scorpions are representative of the rest of Israel. Now, in regards to the locusts being given power, as the scorpions have power, this is referring to the persecution of the martyrs. Let's go to Obadiah chapter 1, verse 15. For the day of Yahuwah is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. Now, the surrounding context of this verse is the destruction of Edom and also the heathen that came against Israel. But this same principle also applies to Israel. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 9. Then said he unto me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, Yahuwah hath forsaken the land, and Yahuwah sees not. And as for me also, mine eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. So now, within the context of the judgment, this recompense has now come to them. And these locusts are going to do unto them as they did unto their brethren. Verse 4. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he strikes a man. So we see that these locusts are instructed not to kill these men, but to torment them for 5 months. So let's go to Josephus' Wars Book 4. And this entire book spans about 1 year. In chapter 1, section 5, it says, Those therefore that were able to find the ways out of the city retired. But now Vespasian always stayed among those that were hard set, for he was deeply affected with seeing the ruins of the city falling upon his army, and forgot to take care of his own preservation. He went up gradually towards the highest parts of the city before he was aware, and was left in the midst of dangers, having only a very few with him. For even his son Titus was not with him at that time, having been then sent into Syria to Mucianus. So it was Vespasian who first led the charge in the war. In section 10, it says, At which time Titus, who was now returned out of the indignation he had at the destruction the Romans had undergone while he was absent, took 200 chosen horsemen and some footmen with him, and entered without noise into the city. So here we see Titus, who is the one who actually sieges Jerusalem, joining Vespasian in the war. And book 5 contains the interval of nearly 6 months from the coming of Titus to besiege Jerusalem to the great extremity to which the Jews were reduced. So according to Josephus, from the coming of Titus to the actual siege was almost 6 months. In chapter 3, section 1, it says, Now as the war abroad ceased for a while, the sedition within was revived. And on the feast of unleavened bread, which was now come, it being the 14th day of the first month, when it is believed the Jews were first freed from the Egyptians, Eleazar and his party opened the gate of this inmost court of the temple, and admitted such of the people as were desirous to worship God into it. Section 2. But Titus, intending to pitch his camp nearer to the city than Scopus, placed as many of his choice horsemen and footmen as he thought sufficient opposite to the Jews to prevent their sallying out upon them. So this is when the siege of Jerusalem actually begins. And if we skip over to book 6, chapter 4, section 5 reads, So Titus retired into the tower of Antonia and resolved to storm the temple the next day, early in the morning, with his whole army, and to encamp round about the holy house. But as for that house, God had for certain long ago doomed it to the fire. And now that fatal day was come, according to the revolution of ages, it was the 10th day of the 5th month, AD 70. So we see that from the time that Titus surrounded Jerusalem to the time that the temple was destroyed was about 4 months, and the siege continued for another few weeks, making it 5 months. So the locusts being referred to here is the Roman army led by Titus. Verse 7, And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. Verse 11, And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue, Apollyon. So let's go to Proverbs 30. Verse 27 says, The locusts have no king, yet go they forth, all of them by bands. So this confirms the obvious, which is these are not physical locusts. So who is it that Vespasian said was leading their charge in the battle? Let's go back to Wars Book 4, chapter 6, section 2. And now all the rest of the commanders of the Romans deemed this sedition among their armies to be of great advantage to them, and were very earnest to march to the city. And they urged Vespasian, as their lord and general in all cases, to make haste, and said to him, that the providence of God is on our side, by setting our enemies at variance against one another, that still the change in such cases may be sudden, and the Jews may quickly be at one again, either because they may be tired out with their civil miseries, or repent them of such doings. But Vespasian replied that they were greatly mistaken in what they thought fit to be done, as those that upon the theater love to make a shoe of their hands and of their weapons, but do it at their own hazard, without considering what was for their advantage and for their security. For that if they now go and attack the city immediately, they shall but occasion their enemies to unite together, and shall convert their force, now it is in its height, against themselves. But if they stay a while, they shall have fewer enemies, because they will be consumed in this sedition. That God acts as a general of the Romans better than he can do, and is giving the Jews up to them without any pains of their own, and granting their army a victory without any danger. So Vespasian is saying that God is the one who is acting as a general on behalf of the Romans and causing the Jews to fight amongst themselves. And if you've read the battles in the Old Testament, this is one of the main strategies that God uses in battle. Think about Gideon's 300. How is it that Gideon was able to defeat the Midianites with only 300 soldiers? If you don't know, go back and read the account. The Jews may have thought that they were fighting the Romans, but they were actually fighting against God. So these locusts, the Roman army that sieged Jerusalem for 5 months. Verse 12, One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for the hour and the day and the month and the year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth, and brimstone, and the heads of the horses as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issue fire, and smoke, and brimstone. By these 3 was the third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. So we first see 4 angels that are bound in the Euphrates being loosed. Now in the book of Jeremiah, the Euphrates is associated with God's judgment. In Jeremiah 13, God had Jeremiah hide a linen girdle by the Euphrates and then go back and get it after it was marred and profitable for nothing. God then tells him that he would mar the pride of Judah and Jerusalem the same way. And in chapter 46, verse 10, he says, "For this is the day of Yahuwah Elohim Sabaoth, a day of vengeance, that he may avenge him of his adversaries, and the sword shall devour, and it shall be satiate and made drunk with their blood. For Yahuwah Elohim Sabaoth has a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates." And this passage is speaking of the judgments of Egypt. And if you notice, the trumpet judgments have been full of the plagues of Egypt. The reason for this is because in Deuteronomy 28, verse 60, Yahuwah said, "Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou was afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee." So these plagues of Egypt are now coming on Israel as part of the curses for breaking the covenant. And those curses were written on the scroll with the 7 seals opened by the Lamb. Finally, in Jeremiah 51, we have the judgment against Babylon. And in verse 59, after Jeremiah has finished the prophecy against Babylon, he writes the words in a book and has Sariah read the judgments against Babylon and then cast the book into the Euphrates. So these angels being loosed from the Euphrates certainly represents the coming judgment of God. After this, John hears an army of 200 million soldiers. There is no army on earth this big. In contrast to the Roman army, which had breastplates of iron, this army had breastplates of fire, jacinth, and brimstone. If we look at this word jacinth, it is from huakinthos. Huakinthos or hyacinth is the 11th stone in the foundation of New Jerusalem. So this army is not an earthly army. This is the Sabaoth of Yahuwah. Now we've been told about this army before. In 2 Kings 6, verse 15, it says, "And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? And he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Yahuwah, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see. And Yahuwah opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha." This revelation that we get from John of 200 million horsemen gives Elisha's words a whole different perspective. Verse 20, "And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils, and idols of gold, and silver, and brass, and stone, and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorcery, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts." Chapter 10, "And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire." Now, considering that John sees this angel coming down from heaven, this indicates a shift in perspective from the prior heavenly point of view to an earthly one. So this angel is Yeshua. Verse 2, "And he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot on the earth, and cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roareth. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not." Now this angel reads this book right after the angels of the Euphrates are loosed. What do you think the odds are of this little book being Jeremiah's book of judgments against Babylon? And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven, and swear by him that lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants, the prophets. Now, this angel has one of his feet on the sea, the other one on the land. This represents both realms that are to be affected with what it is that these seven thunders uttered. He also says that when the seventh trumpet sounds, there will be time no longer. And this language is pointing you back to the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 12 verse 5 says, Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So the man clothed in linen, who originally is the one who gave Daniel this prophecy, and who we've also identified with Yeshua in Revelation chapter 1, he told Daniel that everything will be finished after a time, times and a half. Now here in Revelation 10, he lifts up his hand to heaven and swears that when the seventh angel sounds this trumpet, that time will have already elapsed, and there will be time no longer, but this mystery that was revealed to Daniel will be fulfilled. Now we are already at the sixth trumpet. This means that things are winding down. Verse 8, And the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, Go and take the little book, which is open in the hand of the angel, which stands upon the sea and upon the earth. And I went unto the angel, and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it, and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand, and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. So let's get a perspective on this little book. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 2. Now we already saw this in identifying the scorpion. So let's read verse 8. But thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious like that rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat that I give thee. And when I looked, behold, an hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. And he spread it before me, and it was written within and without, and there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. Ezekiel 3. Moreover he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou findest. Eat this roll, and go and speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that roll. And he said unto me, Son of man, cause thy belly to eat, and fill thy bowels with this roll that I give thee. Then did I eat, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. So Ezekiel is told to eat this scroll and to go and prophesy to Israel. And if we go over to chapter 4, verse 1, Thou also, son of man, take thee a towel and lay it before thee, and portray upon it the city, even Jerusalem, and lay siege against it, and build a fort against it, and cast a mount against it. Set the camp also against it, and set battering rams against it round about. Moreover, take thou unto thee an iron pan, and set it for a wall of iron between thee and the city, and set thy face against it, and it shall be besieged, and thou shalt lay siege against it. This shall be a sign to the house of Israel. So after Ezekiel eats this little book, he is commanded by God to go and prophesy the siege of Jerusalem to the house of Israel. And when John is told to eat this little book, he is being told to prophesy the same thing that Ezekiel was told to prophesy.